I was often bullied because I got pregnant before graduation, unaware of them that my baby daddy was the cold alpha. As an Omega in a prestigious academy dominated by elite alphas, Eli, a quiet scholarship student, finds himself pregnant before graduation, an event that turns him into the center of humiliation, rumors, and ruthless bullying. What no one knows is that the father of his child is Caelum, the cold, feared alpha from the academy's most powerful lineage. And Ares is coming back for high. The academy courtyard smelled of fresh rain and blooming night jasmine, but Eli's morning was anything but peaceful. He pressed a hand to his mouth as nausea surged again, sharp, fast, unforgiving. He barely made it out of the lecture hall before collapsing against the cool metal lockers. His heartbeat thundered. His vision spun. His breathing turned shallow, desperate. The faint echo of footsteps approached, then stopped. Again? A cruel voice chimed behind him. Look who's about to puke like a broken faucet. Eli's fingers dug into the locker. Not now. Please not in front of them. He swallowed hard, fighting it back, but it came anyway, a wave of sickness that forced him to his knees. As he coughed, he heard the all-too-familiar snickers. A cluster of students formed a half-circle around him, hyenas circling a wounded deer. The weak little scholarship Omega is at it again, one boy chuckled. Morning sickness? Isn't that for actual mated Omegas? So who knocked you up? A girl asked with venomous curiosity. Some drunk Omega in an alley? Another added, earning laughter. Eli squeezed his eyes shut, cheeks burning with humiliation. He wished he could disappear into the floor. But worse than the nausea was the ache deep in his heart. They don't know. They can't know. His hand instinctively covered his lower belly, shielding the tiny flutter of life growing inside him. A life created not out of shame, but out of something warm, intense, unforgettable. A night that changed him. But he'd never admit that. Not to them. Not when he didn't even know the man's name. A girl clicked her tongue. You look pathetic, Eli. You can't even keep food down. Are you sure you're fit to stay in this academy? Yeah, another sneered. Pregnant before graduation. What a shame. Eli felt his throat tighten. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but his voice trembled too much. If only he were stronger. A wave of dizziness washed over him again. The hallway tilted. He braced himself against the lockers, cold metal biting into his palms. At that moment, someone kicked his dropped notebook across the floor. Pages fluttered open, revealing sketches of a faceless man with silver eyes, broad shoulders, and a powerful aura. The bullies paused. What's this? Ew, he's drawing grown alphas now? Maybe that's the baby daddy, imaginary. Eli lunged forward, grabbing the notebook protectively. Stop, he whispered. They only laughed harder. He hated this. He hated how easy it was for them to break him. He hated how alone he felt. But what hurt most was knowing that if the father of his child stood here, if that cold, intoxicating alpha from that night appeared, none of them would dare touch him. But that man was long gone. Maybe he had been a dream. A fevered fantasy. A moment of warmth meant only for one night. Eli gently touched his belly again, whispering inside. You're not a mistake. You are my pride. He didn't notice the small, soft kick he received in reply. Nor did he know that far away, a soldier alpha with silver eyes paused mid-mission, feeling something warm pierce his chest. Caelum touched his sternum with a puzzled frown. My Omega? His heartbeat quickened. Something was calling him. Someone. The bond he thought he had lost. Stirred. The academy cafeteria was loud with laughter, clattering trays, and the sharp scent of alpha pheromones, overpowering, almost suffocating for an Omega like Eli. He sat alone at the farthest table near the window where the sunlight couldn't fully reach. His meal tray remained untouched. The sight of food made his stomach twist. Breathe, Eli, just breathe. He pressed a hand to his belly, hoping for calm. But calm never came in a place like this. Not today. Not when the whispers had already started. Eli lifted his head slightly. 2 tables over, 3 girls leaned toward each other, staring in his direction. I heard he was throwing up again this morning, one said dramatically. Classic pregnancy symptom, another replied. And he's an unmated Omega. How embarrassing. A boy joined the conversation, smirking. I bet he did it on purpose. Trying to trap an alpha before graduation. It's what desperate Omegas do. Eli stared at his lap. He wished he could shrink small enough to disappear into the cracks of the floor. But the rumors only grew louder. They always did. By midday, the whispers had become a hurricane. He's pregnant. Doesn't know the father. No alpha wants him. He probably went to some black market heat house. Eli dug his nails into his palms. You know the truth, he reminded himself. Even if no one believes you. But the truth was complicated, painful, and tied to a man he couldn't forget. And couldn't find. Across the cafeteria, two senior alpha boys approached him. They walked with the swagger of people who knew others feared them. Look who's eating alone again, the taller one said. Or trying to eat, the other corrected. Is nausea hitting that hard? Poor baby. He leaned down, tapping Eli's tray with mock concern. You should eat, you know. Your little parasite needs nutrients. Eli stiffened. It's not. Not what? The alpha mocked. Not an accident? Not shameful. The taller alpha folded his arms. So tell us, Eli, who is the lucky father? Or should we say fathers? Laughter erupted around them. Eli felt the back of his throat burn, not from nausea this time but from humiliation. His eyes stung but he refused to cry in front of them. You don't know anything, he whispered. Oh, the alpha leaned closer. Then tell us. Who claimed you? Eli shut his notebook. Silence stretched. He couldn't say the truth. He didn't even know the man's name. How could he tell them about the night when a cold, intense alpha held him like he was precious? How could he explain the faint silver glow in the alpha's eyes? The way their bodies fit as if fate itself guided them? And then, the empty space on the bed the next morning. His heart squeezed. The shorter alpha clicked his tongue. Knew it. You don't know the father. Eli stood up suddenly, chair scraping loudly. Stop, he whispered. His voice shook but held a surprising strength. The alpha raised a brow, amused. Or what? You'll cry on us. Something inside Eli cracked. I know who the father is, he said softly. And he wasn't a mistake. The cafeteria fell unusually quiet. The alpha boys exchanged glances, then laughed again. Eli didn't wait. He grabbed his bag and hurried out of the cafeteria, eyes lowered, heart racing. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. He made it to the empty courtyard where wind rustled fallen leaves. Finally, he sat under a tree and let his tears fall silently. He curled his hand over his stomach. It happened then. A soft flutter. Barely noticeable. Like a tiny heartbeat tapping from the inside. Eli gasped. The baby moved? His tears stopped. He placed both hands on his belly, trembling with wonder. A tiny kick, gentle but real. Warmth bloomed through him, chasing away the cold sting of the world. You're here, he whispered. You're with me. A small, fragile smile formed on his lips, the first one in weeks. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But far away, in a distant training facility drenched in steel and smoke, an alpha in battle uniform froze mid-step. Caelum inhaled sharply. His soldiers watched in confusion as their cold, emotionless commander pressed a hand to his chest. Something warm pulsed in his heart. A connection. A bond. A heartbeat not his own. Commander? A soldier asked. Ares narrowed his silver eyes. Someone is calling me, he said quietly. His wolf stirred inside him. Find him. Find our Omega. The academy was never truly quiet. Between the powerful pheromones of young alphas, the whispers of ambitious students, and the echoing footsteps in marble halls, silence was a luxury. But today, silence arrived like a storm. Eli noticed it before anyone said a word. He was rearranging books in the library, fingers trembling slightly as they traced the edges of pages. The librarians whispered nervously at the counter. I heard the headmaster called an emergency meeting. Is it true? Is he really coming back? Eli's pulse quickened. Who's coming back? He asked gently. The librarian startled. She hadn't realized he was standing close. Oh, Eli. You didn't hear? No, what happened? She looked around then whispered. The Alpha Supreme's heir. Caelum. He's returning to the academy. Eli's heart froze. Caelum. The name rippled through the air like a cold breeze. The students who overheard gasped. Even the strongest alphas shifted uncomfortably. Caelum wasn't just any alpha. He was the alpha, unmatched, unreadable, feared across the continent. A military prodigy. The strongest born in decades. A man whose coldness was legendary. Eli swallowed hard, his breath catching. No, it couldn't be him. The night they shared, the silver eyes, the scent that clung to Eli's skin even now. No, coincidence. It had to be coincidence. But his heart trembled anyway. Campus atmosphere shifts. By noon, the academy was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Why would someone like Ares come back to a school? Maybe the headmaster begged him. But isn't he at the war front? Did something happen? I heard his power is terrifying. They say he once suppressed an entire rogue pack alone. Eli hugged his books closer. He shouldn't be thinking about him. He shouldn't let his heart race. He shouldn't let hope hurt him. Because why would someone like that remember him? Ares' arrival, a scene of power. Later that day, every student was summoned to the courtyard. Eli stood near the back, hoping to blend into the crowd. The sky darkened as clouds thickened overhead, as if nature itself responded to the incoming alpha. The headmaster stepped forward nervously, clearing his throat. Students, today we welcome a distinguished guest. A gust of cold wind cut him off. Then, thud. Boots hit the stone pavement. The crowd parted instinctively as if pushed by an invisible force. A tall figure walked through the courtyard gates, flanked by elite guards. Caelum. He wore a dark military coat, silver insignia glinting against his chest. His aura poured across the courtyard, cold, overwhelming, commanding. He didn't need to say a word. Alphas bowed their heads instinctively. Betas stiffened. Omegas trembled. Eli clutched his bag, his heartbeat violent. No. Breathe. Don't look. If you don't look. But something in his soul tugged painfully. He looked up. And their eyes met. Silver lightning exploded in Eli's mind. Ares stopped walking. His soldiers froze, confused. Ares' breath slipped out of him, shocked, sharp, raw. You. Students whispered frantically. Is he staring at someone? Who is he looking at? Did that Omega do something? Ares' eyes widened, a rare sight. His cold mask cracked for the first time in years. He stepped forward. Then another step. Then another. Eli's knees weakened. Ares reached him, towering over him like a shadow that could swallow the world. His voice was hoarse, almost unbelieving. Omega. Eli trembled. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ares reached out, slow, hesitant, touching Eli's wrist gently, almost reverently. The scent I've been searching for, he whispered. It was you. Eli's breath hitched. Why you? You remember? Ares' jaw tightened. I never forgot. Memories flashed behind his eyes, the night that shattered his cold discipline, the warmth he couldn't erase, the empty bed the morning after. Ares exhaled sharply, almost angrily. I searched every city, he said. You disappeared. Eli shook his head. You left. I thought you didn't want to find me. Ares' eyes darkened with pain. I was deployed to the battlefield at dawn, he said quietly. I had no choice. The entire courtyard watched in stunned silence. Then Ares stepped closer. Close enough that only Eli could hear him. My body recognized you the moment I saw you, Ares whispered, voice low and trembling. My Omega. My mate. Eli's world tilted. His heart pounded. His lips parted. He couldn't breathe. Ares slowly, very slowly, lowered his gaze. To Eli's belly. To the barely noticeable swell under his clothes. Ares inhaled sharply, his pupils dilating. He looked up, voice breaking in disbelief. You're pregnant? Eli felt tears form. And then, barely a whisper. It's yours. The courtyard erupted in gasps. But Ares didn't hear them. He was only looking at Eli. At the life inside him. At the Omega fate brought back to him. Ares lifted a trembling hand. Then that means... His eyes softened, melting, desperate, full of longing. That's our child. The courtyard was frozen. Not by weather, but by Ares Caelum's presence. A force so sharp and cold it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. Eli stood trembling in front of him, the weight of every curious stare burning into his skin. But Ares didn't look at anyone else. Only him. Only Eli. Only the Omega he thought he'd lost. Ares steps closer, a moment that halts the world. Ares moved with a slow, deliberate intensity, each step echoing like a heartbeat through the courtyard. His voice was controlled, but beneath the ice. Something shaken, something alive, trembled. You're pregnant, he repeated softly. Almost like he couldn't believe the words. Eli's throat tightened. Yes. Ares swallowed, jaw tense, eyelashes lowering as if the world was suddenly too bright for him. And the child? He paused, breath catching. Tell me, Eli. Is it mine? Students held their breath. Eli nodded slowly. It's yours. Gasps ripped through the crowd like knives. Alpha stiffened. Omegas flushed in shock. Even the headmaster took a step backward. But Ares dropped to one knee. Right there. In front of everyone. A dangerous, cold, feared Alpha, kneeling before a trembling, bullied Omega. Eli's eyes widened, heart racing painfully. Aries, what are you? Aries lifted a hand, hesitating for only a split second before touching Eli's stomach. The gentleness in his fingers contradicted everything they knew about him. My air, he whispered. My blood. His voice cracked just slightly. Eli felt his breath shatter inside him. Aries? His voice was barely audible. Aries looked up at him, silver eyes raw and unguarded. Why didn't you find me? Eli whispered, hurt trembling in his voice. You left before sunrise. I woke up alone. Aries closed his eyes, remorse shadowing his face. I didn't leave because I wanted to, he said quietly. I was forced to the battlefield at dawn. I thought I would die that day. Eli trembled. Aries stood slowly, towering over him once more, but this time the coldness in his aura had shifted. It wasn't anger. It was claim. Recognition. Bond. My wolf, Aries murmured, has been howling for you since that night. The bully stepped forward, and regret everything. The crowd had forgotten to breathe, until one of the bullies from earlier stammered. Sir, we didn't know he was yours. Aries' head turned sharply. In an instant his aura surged like a blizzard. A dark, furious growl vibrated in the air, quiet but enough to make everyone flinch. You touched him. Aries' voice dropped into something dangerous, lethal. The boy fell to his knees, trembling violently. We didn't mean. You humiliated him. Aries' eyes narrowed, icy and deadly. You mocked a pregnant Omega carrying my child. A whisper of power rippled through the courtyard. Faint cracks formed on the stone tiles beneath Aries' feet. Some students cried silently. Even other alphas couldn't withstand that killing intent. But then, a hand gently touched Aries' sleeve, and the entire storm stopped. Eli shook his head softly. Aries, don't hurt them. Aries blinked, stunned. You're too kind, he murmured. I just don't want more fear, Eli whispered. I've had enough of fear. Aries exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing. As you wish, he said quietly. For you, I will restrain my wrath. Every bully collapsed in relief. But they understood. They would never touch Eli again. Never whisper about him. Never breathe his name without trembling. Aries takes his place beside Eli. Aries clasped Eli's hand, openly, willingly, possessively. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. The feared Alpha Supreme Heir, holding the hand of a bullied Omega like he was something precious. Eli's cheeks flushed, his fingers trembling inside Aries' grip. Aries leaned closer, his voice low enough that only Eli could hear. I am here now. I will never abandon you again. Eli lowered his head, tears softly slipping down his cheeks. You promise? He whispered. Aries lifted Eli's chin with gentle fingers, forcing him to meet his eyes. On my name, Aries said softly. On my blood. On my wolf's vow. He pressed his forehead to Eli's. I will protect you. I will protect our child. I will protect our family. Eli's breath stuttered. For the first time since his pregnancy began, he didn't feel alone. For the first time since Aries Caelum set foot in the academy, the courtyard felt too quiet. Every student stood frozen, watching the cold Alpha Supreme Heir as he held Eli's trembling hand. Aries' fingers were laced with Eli's, firm, protective, unyielding, yet gentle enough that Eli felt safe for the first time in months. But the silence didn't last long. Aries' gaze shifted. Sure. Cold. Dangerous. He scanned the crowd like a hunter searching for prey. And the prey knew exactly who they were. Aries' aura tightens around the courtyard. A faint pulse of alpha power vibrated outward from Aries. Students staggered. Some betas fell to their knees. Omegas whimpered softly, overwhelmed by instinctual submission. Eli felt the energy too, a cold wind curling around him, but somehow, Aries' power parted around his body like a shield, never touching him. Aries squeezed his hand reassuringly. Then his voice dropped, low, emotionless, lethal. Who bullied him? Dead silence. Eli's breath caught. His heart hammered. He shook his head quickly. Aries, please? But Aries gently stopped him with a touch to the wrist. Eli, he murmured softly, I need to know. His tone held no anger toward Eli. Only a deep, simmering fear that someone had harmed what was his. Eli bit his lip, but he couldn't speak. He didn't want this. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want blood or fear. But the bullies? They stepped backward in terror as Aries' eyes slowly locked onto them one by one. The first bully cracks. The boy who kicked Eli's notebook earlier suddenly collapsed to his knees. Sir. Alpha Caelum. He trembled so violently that his voice cracked. We didn't know. Ares tilted his head, expression unreadable. That makes your actions acceptable? No. No, sir, You pushed a pregnant Omega, Ares said. His tone was calm, but the calmness was far more terrifying than rage. The bully's lips quivered. I'm sorry? Ares stepped toward him, each boot step echoing like thunder. Sorry, he echoed coldly. Say that to him. The boy looked up hesitantly at Eli. I'm sorry, Eli. Ares' aura spiked again, sharp enough to cut. Not like that. The bully swallowed hard and lowered his head to the ground until his forehead touched the stone. I am deeply sorry for hurting you, he whispered. For the rumors. For humiliating you. For everything. Eli's eyes softened. He didn't enjoy this. His heart hurt seeing someone treated like prey. Eli took a small step forward. It's enough, he said quietly. Ares turned sharply. Eli. I said it's enough. The courtyard gasped. No one had ever spoken over Ares' Caelum before. But instead of anger, Ares' eyes softened, a flicker of warmth breaking through the ice. You're too kind, Ares murmured. You shouldn't forget they hurt you. I'm not forgiving them, Eli said softly. I just don't want to see anyone hurt because of me. Ares inhaled deeply. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration, worry, longing all bleeding into his features. You're going to be the death of me, he whispered. Eli flushed gently. The second bully steps forward. The tall girl who mocked Eli about not knowing the father stepped forward shakily. Her arrogance from earlier had evaporated, leaving fear behind. Alpha Caelum, she stuttered. We didn't know Eli was yours. Ares' gaze sharpened. You targeted a vulnerable Omega, he said. And you did it repeatedly. She began crying softly. We thought he had no one. Ares' eyes were cold. That is precisely why you preyed on him. The girl's knees buckled. I'm sorry, please, forgive me. Eli stepped between them. Ares stiffened. Eli. She's scared, Eli whispered. That's enough. Ares opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when he saw Eli trembling slightly. Not from fear. But from exhaustion. From stress. From carrying a child while enduring cruelty. Ares' expression shifted instantly. Concern replaced anger. Sit, he said softly to Eli. Please. You're pale. Without waiting, he guided Eli gently toward a bench, his hands supporting Eli's elbows carefully, mindful of the pregnancy. Students watched in disbelief. Ares' Caelum wasn't cold. He wasn't cruel. He was protective. Terrifyingly protective. And every rumor about Eli shattered that moment. Ares speaks to the entire academy. Once Eli was seated, Ares straightened, his aura becoming razor-sharp again. His voice carried across the courtyard, deep, commanding, absolute. Hear me, Ares said. This Omega is under my protection. Gasps erupted. Ares continued, eyes like shards of silver. Any act against him is an act against me. Students trembled. And I do not tolerate cruelty toward the weak. He paused, then turned back to Eli, his voice softening. Or toward what is mine. Eli's breath hitched. His heart fluttered wildly. Ares, why do you speak like that? Like I'm important to you. Like I matter. Ares knelt beside him, ignoring the shocked murmurs, and touched Eli's cheek with gentle fingers. You've suffered enough, he whispered. I'm taking you home with me. Eli's eyes widened. What? Now. Ares leaned closer, his voice dark and trembling. I've already lost you once. I'm not risking losing you again. The courtyard erupted in stunned whispers. But Eli. He didn't argue. Because deep inside him, the part that still remembered Ares' scent, his warmth, his touch, felt safe for the first time in months. The hospital room was too bright. Too sterile. Too still. But Ares didn't move. He sat on the chair beside Eli's bed like a wolf guarding a fragile treasure. Back straight, jaw tight. One hand tightly wrapped around Eli's limp fingers as if afraid that letting go would make him disappear again. The monitors beeped rhythmically, the only sound in the quiet. Eli had been unconscious for almost an hour. An hour that felt longer than all Ares' battlefield missions combined. Every minute gnawed at him. Every second reminded him he had almost lost everything without even knowing he'd had anything. His mate. His Omega. His future child. Ares bowed his head, resting his forehead against the back of Eli's hand. This was not the cold alpha the world feared. This wasn't the ruthless commander armies obeyed. This wasn't the man who never cracked. This was Caelum, the bond-starved alpha whose heart had finally found its missing half, then came close to losing it. He whispered, voice tight. Eli, I'm here. I'm not leaving ever again. His thumb brushed Eli's knuckles gently, almost reverently. He couldn't stop remembering the sight of Eli collapsing, pale, trembling, breathless. His small body curling inward protectively around their child. The terror that shot through Aries' chest felt like being stabbed through the heart. And the moment the doctor told him, his condition worsened because he's been carrying everything alone, Aries had nearly lost control. He clenched his jaw now, face twisting in guilt. What kind of alpha had he been? How could he have marked someone so gentle, and then left him to survive alone? What if he'd been 1 minute later? What if the stress had harmed their child? Aries swallowed hard, voice cracking despite him being the cold alpha everyone feared. I should have found you earlier. I should have protected you from everything. He leaned closer, whispering softly. I will fix it. I swear on my name, on my pack, on my life. A movement. A soft inhale. Eli's eyelashes fluttered. Aries shot up instantly, eyes sharp but overflowing with relief. Eli blinked, adjusting to the light as he scanned the room hopelessly, until his gaze landed on the tall figure beside him. Aries? His voice was small, uncertain, disbelieving. Aries exhaled shakily. He didn't smile often, rarely actually, but right now a soft, raw, barely there smile crossed his lips. You're awake. Eli tried to sit up, but Aries gently pressed a hand to his shoulder. Slowly. Your body is exhausted. Eli lowered his eyes, face clouded with embarrassment and fear. Why are you here? Aries didn't answer immediately. He simply reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind Eli's ear with a touch so gentle it made Eli freeze. Then, because you're my mate. Eli's breath hitched. Aries' voice was soft but filled with iron truth. I found you again. And I'm not letting you go. Eli swallowed, eyes trembling with emotion. But you disappeared. I thought, maybe you forgot me. Or didn't want a bond with an Omega like me, and the baby. Aries moved before Eli could finish. He sank to his knees beside the bed. The top alpha of his entire territory. The feared commander. The cold, untouchable leader. Kneeling for one Omega. Eli's eyes widened, tears pooling. Aries gently took Eli's trembling hands in his own. Eli. His voice was low, unwavering. I have never bowed to anyone in my life. Not to kings. Not to generals. Not even to my father. His lips brushed Eli's knuckles. But I bow for you. Eli's tears fell. Aries continued, voice firm and painfully sincere. You carried my child alone. You endured the cruelty of others alone. You nearly died from stress, alone. He looked up, silver eyes burning. Never again. He placed a hand lightly over Eli's belly, reverent and protective. This child is ours. And you? His fingers rose to cup Eli's cheek. You are my Omega. My mate. My heart. Eli's lips trembled. I was so scared, he whispered. Aries leaned in, resting his forehead against Eli's. I know, he breathed. But I'm here now. And nothing, not your bullies, not your fears, not fate itself, will take you away from me. Eli closed his eyes, letting himself lean into the warmth of the alpha he had dreamed of for months. Aries wrapped an arm around him delicately, mindful of his condition, pulling him close enough to feel his heartbeat. Strong, steady, safe. For the first time in months, Eli felt protected. For the first time since that fateful night, the bond finally felt complete. The academy hallways hummed with their usual morning noise, students rushing, gossip bubbling, footsteps echoing. But today, there was a strange tension in the air. It began as whispers. Did you hear? He's back. No way, him? Here? Oh my gods, isn't he the Alpha General? And he's heading toward the courtyard. No one knew the full truth yet. Just that a terrifying, handsome, cold alpha with the sharpest silver eyes was stalking through the school like he owned the land itself. And in a way he did. Caelum walked with long, lethal strides, dressed not in military armor but in a dark, fitted coat that hugged his powerful frame. Each step echoed authority. His aura, massive, dominant, unmistakably alpha commander level, pushed students aside without him touching them. They bowed. They parted like waves around a ship. Some trembled. Some swooned. But Aries didn't care. He was only looking for one person. Sparkles meanwhile in Eli's classroom. Eli sat at his desk, hands folded protectively over his belly. The doctor had allowed him to return to school, but only because Aries insisted on personally monitoring him every few hours. Still, Eli felt uneasy. 4 months he'd endured bullying, whispers, and mockery. Even if Aries was back now, would anything actually change? He tried to focus on his textbook. But the voices around him grew sharper. I mean, look at him. Pregnant and pretending to be normal. He's probably faking the father's identity. Who'd want him? Yeah, maybe he got knocked up by some old sugar alpha. Eli's heart pinched. Just as he lowered his gaze, the classroom door slammed open. Art. The entire room jumped. A cold voice cut through the air. Which one of you spoke just now? Silence. Absolute silence. Eli froze. That voice. Impossibly deep, impossibly familiar. Aries? He slowly turned, and his breath caught. Aries stood in the doorway like a storm-given flesh. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Silver eyes blazing with murder. A lethal alpha presence filled the room, sucking the air out of everyone's lungs. Gasps echoed. Aries Caelum? The Alpha General, here? Gods, his aura. Students shrank back, trembling. Eli swallowed hard. Aries, what are you doing here? But Aries didn't answer. He strode across the classroom in a heartbeat, his gaze locked onto Eli as if no one else existed. He stopped right in front of Eli, then looked around the room again, expression turning colder. Who bullied my mate? Eli's heart stuttered. The entire class went dead silent. A girl near the window squeaked, mate? A boy choked, Eli has a mate? An alpha, that alpha? Aries didn't give them time to recover. He reached out and gently cupped Eli's jaw, lifting his face. Are you hurt? He asked softly. The tenderness in that voice was so shocking the entire room gasped again. Eli's eyes glimmered, voice barely a whisper. No, I'm okay. Now that you're... Aries didn't let him finish. He pressed his forehead against Eli's, inhaling deeply, claiming him with a primal, unmistakable gesture of devotion. The students erupted in stunned silence. Aries pulled back just enough to speak, but his arms remained protectively around Eli. Listen well, he said, voice deep and deadly calm. This Omega, Eli, is my bonded mate. Gasp. Confusion. Aries continued, voice echoing with authority that shook the classroom walls. He carries my child. His hand slid gently to Eli's belly, caressing it with reverence. And any harm, insult, or disrespect toward him. His gaze sharpened to a predator's glare. Is an attack on me. A silence so heavy it suffocated the room followed. One brave, very stupid, student stuttered. So he wasn't lying? Aries' eyes snapped to him. Lying? He said he was pregnant. He didn't owe any of you an explanation. He stepped forward. You, however, owe him an apology. The bully wilted. All at once, the students bowed, trembling, murmuring apologies. Eli stared at the floor, overwhelmed. Aries turned back to him, tilting his chin up. You don't have to bow to anyone, he said softly. They bow to you now. Eli's eyes widened. Aries? Aries wrapped an arm around his waist, supporting him. I'm taking you home. What classes? Aries silenced him with a gentle kiss to the forehead. Your health and our child come first. The students gasped again, half in envy, half in disbelief. Aries held out his hand. Come with me, Eli. Eli took it. His hand fit perfectly inside Aries. As they walked out, the hallway parted like a sea. Students stared, wordless. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered in awe. Some cried out of jealousy. Some bowed deeply as Aries passed. But no one dared touch him. Because everyone now knew. The weak, bullied, lonely pregnant Omega was the mate of the strongest alpha alive. Sparkles outside the academy. Aries opened the car door, steady and gentle. Eli hesitated, clutching his stomach lightly. Aries, are you sure this is okay? I feel like you declared war in my classroom. Aries chuckled softly, just once, just for him. I don't need to declare war, Eli. He leaned closer, voice warm and protective. I just need everyone to understand that you and our child are my world. Eli's breath caught. Aries brushed a thumb over his cheek. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. Eli smiled, small, shy, glowing. Then, take me home, Aries. Aries kissed his forehead gently. As you wish, my Omega. Eli climbed into the car. Aries joined him. And as the engine started, as the academy faded behind them, Eli placed a hand on his belly, feeling a tiny flutter, his child responding. This time the flutter didn't come from fear or loneliness. It came from hope, from safety, from love. For the first time, Eli felt like he and his child truly belonged somewhere. No, not somewhere. With someone. An Aries? He looked at Eli with a softness no one else would ever see. He had finally found what he didn't know he'd been searching for. His mate. His family. His future.